So good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are excited to kick off this series with the Regional Foxtrotting Horse Foundation. For those of you that are familiar with the foundation, you'll know that part of our goal is to have a positive impact on the Missouri Foxtrotting horse breed. And we do that a lot through encouraging participation in equine events, all types of equine events. And so I'm really excited to learn more about competing in endurance. This is something that I've always been interested in. I can remember as a kid, I had that picture of Cougar Rock from Tevis Cup that I had hung up because I thought someday I'm going to do this. Not sure I'm ready for that yet still, but I think it's a sport that a lot of people are interested in. And we have a lot of foxtrotters that participate in this, a lot of gaited horses. And I know over the years, I've talked to a lot of people that are interested in it. So really excited to have this conversation tonight with Monica Chapman. She has a lot of experience with the American Endurance Ride Conference through their board, as well as competition. So if you have any questions, be sure to put those in the chat for us tonight, and we'll look at those. And again, I hope everyone enjoys this conversation. So welcome, Monica. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
So let's just start off with some basics. How did you get involved with horses?
Oh, well, I got my first pony in third grade. You know, one of those things where my mom says the first word out of my mouth was horsey. So I've been addicted my whole life. I saw a TV show back in probably 93, 94. And it was, you know, some kind of horse TV show. And they were covering the World Endurance Championships in Denmark. And I had already spent hours just riding the gravel roads around where I boarded my horse on the weekends. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's actually a sport that's what you do. You ride for hours. And at the time, me and my husband were getting ready to move to the San Antonio area. And I got moved, got settled, asked my veterinarian if he knew any endurance riders, and he gave me some names, and I was addicted ever since 27 and a half years ago.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about the sport of endurance. So I think a lot of people know about some of it. They've seen some competitions, but it's a lot more complicated than just sort of that long distance 100-mile ride that we see all the time.
Yeah. I mean, endurance is 25, normally 25, 50, and 100 miles, depending on your trail system and how many miles of trail you have. They can be a 30-mile ride instead of 25, or a 60-mile ride instead of a 50. But most of them are 25 and 50 miles. And then there aren't that many 100-mile rides. There are a few scattered throughout the United States, but mostly our highest entry distance is the 25-mile ride.
And how long do you have to complete a 25-mile ride?
You have 6 hours to get off the course. And then once you're off the course, you have another 30 minutes to pulse down. So what you have to do for endurance is you will vet your horse through before the ride. And then depending on the distance, you will have at least one veterinary exam during the ride. And then you'll have another veterinary exam at the end of the ride. And they check things like your mucous membrane color, your jugular refill, lameness. You have to trot out in a straight line and back. They check for wounds and tack galls and if the horse is sore, to start your veterinary exam, your horse has to meet a specific pulse criteria. And so at the vet check that's during the ride, once your horse meets pulse criteria, then your hold starts, and they can be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And in that time period, you feed your horse, you feed you, potty breaks, just let the horse relax, hand graze them if you're somewhere that has grass, give them their mash if, that's what they like. You just let them, do what they want for that, 45 minutes or however long it is. And so within that 6 hours, that hold is in that 6 hours. Okay. So you usually average, if you can average 5 to 5.5 miles an hour speed, you will normally finish in time. Just kind of depends on if they have a 30-minute hold or an hour hold. But it's not, I'll be honest, I'm not a gaited horse person, so I don't know how fast the different gaits are. So I don't want to say if you do a such and such gait, you'll be fine. But, I ride trotting horses, and they can easily do a pretty easy trot, and they finish in time if they're conditioned for it. But I know of a number of people with non-distance horses, but they're fit for other sports, like Western sports, like team penning or extreme cowboy racing, that as long as their horses are not obese and they're sound, they can, and it's not extremely hot, they go out there and they can finish a 25-mile ride in the time period just fine. I think people would be surprised how well their horse can do. Sometimes I think it's the rider that is ready for it. Yes. Versus the horse.
Yeah, I've thought about that too. I'm sure there's a lot of rider conditioning that comes into that.
Yeah. And honestly, I started this sport in my 20s, and I could tell as I have aged that, especially when I do the 50-mile rides, I do personally have to do a lot more exercising myself to be able to not feel like I got run over by a truck afterwards.
Yeah. So the stops along the ride, do you have a crew? Do most riders then have support crew, or is there people with their, how does that work?
So I have done probably 90% of my rides without a crew. In the central region of the United States, kind of the central United States, I call it the area between the mountain ranges, we tend to not have as much public land. And so many of our rides are loops that go back to the base camp every time. So if your trail goes back to base camp every time, sometimes you can go back to your trailer, depending on how far it's parked from the vet check, or they'll have an area by the vet check where you can bring your stuff up and have it there. And so then you don't have to have a crew. And then many of the competitions that have like one big loop and their vet check is out on the loop somewhere, they will normally haul your bag out there. But you kind of got to pack it in a bag. You can't take half of your trailer out there. But honestly, if you're riding somewhere that has a lot of lush grass, it's amazing. Horses can easily do, especially a 25-mile ride with just grass, and then you need to electrolyte depending on the weather. And it's when the desert rides, that's where you kind of have to pack more stuff because there's nothing for them to munch on.
So the other term you use that I have a question about is pulse down.
Okay.
So what is that? And does every horse have the same rate that they're looking for?
No. So it's their heart rate, just like humans have a heart rate. And I'm in the central part of the United States. Most of our rides, they have a heart rate of 64 beats per minute. And then at the end of a limited distance ride, which are the 25 to 35 mile rides, you have to be down to 60 beats per minute. And there are heart monitors you can buy, or you can just get a good stethoscope and you check their heart rate in their left armpit. And what you would do is get a watch or stopwatch or your smartphone, and you put that stethoscope in your left armpit or in their left armpit, and you start your stopwatch. You count for 15 seconds, and then you multiply that by 4, and that's their heart rate. Most horses' resting heart rates will be between 24 and 40, 44. And I've competed on a lot of different horses, and they're kind of all over the place on what a horse's resting heart rate is. You can change it somewhat with conditioning, but to a degree, it is what it is. And they're not going to keep you from starting a ride if it's 40. Now if you go up there and your horse is relaxed and not upset because his buddy's back at the trailer or whatever, and his heart rate is like in the 70s or 80s, well, then they're probably not going to let you start then, because that's higher than what you can even be during the competition. And that means there's something wrong. You wouldn't want to start a competition with a horse with a extremely high heart rate anyway. But that's just good knowledge to have. Because like if you have an emergency with your horse and you call your local veterinarian, if you can tell your veterinarian what your horse's heart rate is, that can be very helpful to those local veterinarians. In AERC, the American Endurance Ride Conference, we do have a YouTube channel, and there are a number of videos on the YouTube channel, and I'm pretty sure one of them is how to take a horse's heart rate.
Okay.
And there's a lot of other good subjects on there too, like what you would use in your crew bag, how to camp, how the flow of a vet check works. It's just got a lot of really good information on there.
So we talk about camping with your horse. Do people tie to their trailer? They high line? How does all that work?
Yeah, you can do anything. AERC has the organization has no rules on how to camp with your horse. Now, specific campgrounds may have rules. So that is something that you would need to check before you go to a specific competition. You would need to check with the event manager, or they may refer you to the campground on what rules they have, if any. Because sometimes we camp in organized campgrounds, that have electric hookups and pipe pins. And then sometimes we're just camped in somebody's field. But yeah, I have picket lined, I have tied to my trailer, I have used a high tie, I've used electric fence. I've used the permanent pipe pins at campgrounds. I have not brought along panels. My trailer's not set up that way, but it's very every horse is kind of different on what works for them, and so we just kind of leave it up to the rider to know what's best for their horse.
So I think AERC's slogan is something to finish is to win. Is that
yes,
close?
To finish is to win.
To win. And so I'm kind of intrigued by that. Obviously, it's a competition, so I'm sure fastest time wins. But it sounds like a lot of people compete just on their personal best.
Yes. That's one of the things that drew me to sticking with the sport, because of course, when you're new to something, you don't understand all the caveats and you don't understand necessarily what it takes to win. Because depending on where you live, you may have 100 people in your distance, or you may have 10. So, it kind of depends where you're at on how much, quote, competition there is. But the thing I like about endurance is there are so many goals that you can set your own personal goals. Like I had a goal, and it's not, I'm not saying I'm not doing it anymore, but it's slowed down the last couple of years. I had a goal of doing a ride in every state, and I've done rides in 26 states. And to me, that's a goal that doesn't tear my horse up because I'm riding him too fast. I get to see amazing parts of this country, and I get to meet new people. My horse that I currently compete on just reached, to me, what is the epitome of endurance riding's goal. He got what is called the Decade Team Award in November, which is where you and the horse, the same team, has to do at least one 50-mile ride for 10 years.
Wow.
Now, they do not have to be consecutive, because sometimes, a horse gets injured, a rider gets injured, somebody breeds their mare. But it is based on longevity. And that is one thing that endurance is pretty, we like to push horse welfare. And we think the more years a horse can go down the trail, it's better for everybody. And so I'm really proud of that goal. And it doesn't matter how fast you go. Some of those rides in that 10 years, we were right up front with the front runners. And then other of those rides, we were pushing to finish the 12-hour time limit for a 50-mile ride. But there are goals based on your best condition awards, which is the top 10 horses in a distance get judged on best condition. And it's formula based on weight that the horse carried, the time that they did the course, and then the veterinarian's opinion of that horse. There's, how many points you got in a year based on how many competitions you did and where you placed. There's mileage awards. There's, you don't have to be up front to get some of the biggest national awards. So that's what I like about endurance is you can be a completer, or you can, be a high level competitor. And we're all equal when we're in camp, and we're all having fun, and we're all friends, no matter if you're on that really expensive Arabian racehorse that, looks like Pegasus going down the trail, or if you're on a half draft mule that, you're riding along with your friends and just laughing for the whole time. I mean, everybody's equal. And that's one thing that's I've made some of the best friends in my life in the sport.
So just to add on to the awards, so there's also breed awards. I just want to, because I know we have some listeners that are Missouri Foxtrotter owners. And so just kind of add in there, MFTHBA does partner with the ARC and does do top 10 or top 5 mileage award winners for both limited distance and the other distance as well. So that's another thing. And I know a lot of breed associations do that with AARC.
Yeah, we give out, or not we, the breed, there are like 26 different breed organizations that give awards. And the Foxtrotting Association is definitely one of the most generous. And I talked to our office today, and they did say, so there's the top 5 in limited distance, which are the 25 to 35 mile rides. And then there's top 5 in the 50-mile distance and up. And she did say that sometimes they don't, all the endurance distant isn't always given out. There aren't always 5 places to give out.
Right.
So, that's something that, you guys could easily go for.
Right.
And it sounds like they're really nice jackets.
Yeah, I know that MFTHBA gets, people post them. They look lovely when people get them. So there are some breed awards. I know lots of different breeds. I'm sure people are watching that ride different things. So that's something else to look at, just that competition on the breed side as well.
Yeah, and if you go to the AERC website, it's aerc.org. And you go to, I think it's the competitions tab, and then the awards tab. It'll say like breed awards. And that gives a list of some of the breeds that do give out awards. I mean, we give all the, expected registries, but then there's even like the Conameras, the Akaltekis. I mean, there are some really not that common horse breed awards that are given out, and it's really cool. I mean,
yeah, it's kind of neat to have a competition that really any horse can compete in, regardless of what breed it is or size it is, or you can just take out whatever horse you love and try to compete.
Oh yes, I mean, we were talking before. Right now, I'm competing on a half Arab, half quarter horse, and he definitely took the quarter horse half, and he's 15.2, almost 1,200 pounds. Now, I can't take him to Florida when it's 100 degrees and 100% humidity, and I just know that about him, so I don't take him to rides like that. But I tell you what, he does really well on the cold weather. He just eats that up. And so, you kind of learn your horse and what works well for your horse, and I just schedule around it. But you need to do it on a horse you enjoy. The other things that are kind of cool about endurance is there's no rules on tack or what you wear. You can wear whatever you want, and you can use whatever kind of tack you want. There are no bit rules or anything like that. Now, if somebody thinks you're abusing a horse, that's a different deal. But we don't have specific rules about specific bits. The biggest thing is when you ride that far, your saddle needs to fit your horse, and then you second. I mean, a lot of people get saddles that fit them, but when you ride 25 miles or more, and you will find out, you may think your saddle's working out, and then you do a couple of competitions and you realize it's not. But that's probably the biggest thing, is your tack needs to work well for your horse.
So you mentioned your horse likes cold weather rides. So that leads me to believe there's rides all year round.
Yes, there is. Yeah, anywhere in the United States, you can usually find a ride. I'm in, like I said, the middle part. And so I'm around Kansas City, and there is a ride this coming weekend in northeast Oklahoma. Sometimes they get canceled in the winter if it's, there's nobody can get there, or if it's snowy or icy or whatever. But yeah, we are more apt to have rides in the cold weather than the hot weather, because the horses don't overheat. in cold weather. And as long as they're moving down the trail, they stay warm. It's usually the riders that don't want to deal with the cold weather.
Yeah, if you have any tips for keeping your hands warm riding in the winter, I'll take those, because I love to trail ride in the winter, but finding the right gloves is hard.
I don't, for me, my hands really don't get that cold as long as I'm moving. If I'm walking, then nothing stays warm. But if I'm trotting, I usually stay pretty warm. I did a ride at Thanksgiving because I needed 1 point on my horse to get his Legion of Supreme Honor with the Half Arabian Horse Association. And we rode for 4.5 hours in the rain in like 30 something degree weather. And I didn't get cold until it was over and I got off and stuff. So it's not normally what I like to do, but I wanted to get that goal achieved before the end of the ride season.
So is that like a lifetime achievement?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Arabian Horse Association also covers Anglo-Arabians, which are part thoroughbred, part Arabian, and then they have a half Arabian registry also. And so, yeah, if you earn so many points, then your horse gets a plus or a slash behind his name.
Oh, very exciting.
Yeah.
So for our Foxtrotter people out there, the MFTHBA recently launched a Lifetime Achievement Award program. It's called their medal program, and they actually have endurance medals in there.
Oh, cool.
It's based on lifetime mileage with ARC events. So it's something, if anyone's watching and they're doing endurance with their Foxtrotter, it's definitely something to look into.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I like about endurance is any breed of healthy, sound horse can do it. And I mean, what better way to spend time with your horse all day?
Right.
Yeah,
a lot of people are riding anyway. I mean, go out and have fun and do a competition with it.
Right. And sometimes, especially we have a lot of rides in Texas that tend to be on private ranches because they don't have a lot of public land, and you're not going to get to ride on those public ranches just as a trail rider. They're only open to the competition, because the event manager had to pay a hefty fee. But there are some really cool places that we've had endurance rides that, you're not going to get onto normally.
Right. So something I've seen on endurance message boards that I have no idea how you do, but they talk about tailing.
Oh.
So A, what is it and why do you use it? And B, how in the world do you teach your horse to do that?
Well, so first off, practice at home before you get to a competition, if you can, or practice with your friends, not during a competition. But what it is mostly used for, which isn't a big problem around where I live, down in the Ozarks, I've done it down there some, but what it's for is, so if you're going up a bunch of big hills, you're not stressing your horse. So you get off your horse and then you grab onto the horse's tail and you let it pull you up the hill. So you normally need a long rein so you can hold, the tail with one hand and a rein in the other hand. And, a lot of horses will just, if you're riding in a group and you're the first horse or you're by yourself, most horses will kind of follow a trail if it's well defined. And if you're riding with a group, they're just going to follow the horse in front of them. Now, this isn't something I would do if it's the beginning of the competition and they're all wired and they're like really wound up and ready to go, because they're probably going to go up that hill so fast you can't even hold on, and you'll get left at the bottom and they're gone. But it really does. If you're doing a ride that has a lot of up and downs, it does help the horse out. But that's what tailing is. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. It just always kind of intrigued me on how do you teach your horse to do it? The rein. See, the pictures I've seen, you never see that rein. So that makes a lot more sense that
well, that's how I do it. Maybe some people don't have a rein. I don't know. I don't have that kind of guts to just not have a hold of my horse.
Yeah. That's
well,
all.
And when I say you want to practice at home, you want to make sure your horse is okay with you grabbing its tail. Some people, do those like tail stretches and stuff like that. And those are good things to maybe practice, before you decide to have it pull you up a hill. And I've never had a horse get upset about it, but you would hate to be the one that gets kicked in the face.
Yeah, I can see where you wouldn't want to just spring that on them.
Yeah, because sometimes, they have different personalities sometimes when they're out with a group of horses than they do when you're just riding with your friends or by yourself. So I'm kind of into safety. Just like a crupper, if anybody uses a crupper, practice at home first, because I've known numerous people that have been bucked off because they didn't practice at home.
Yeah. So we talked about that this sport is really open to any type of horse, any type of rider, really. But are there any restrictions on horses that people need to know about if they're going to get started?
Well, the minimum age for a 25 to 35 mile ride is 4. And then a minimum age for a 50-mile ride is 5. And then a 100-mile ride is 6.
Okay.
And so those are the age requirements. And then besides that, they just have to pass a vet check. And normally, at the vet end before the ride, normally the only thing they would get disqualified for is if they're lame. Because they haven't exercised yet. So all those metabolic factors like the pulse and the jugular refill, those, the horse hasn't been stressed for those to get out of whack. And so, yeah, the lameness is the biggest thing before the ride. And then,
how about,
go ahead.
I was going to say, and I was just going to go on, how about the rider? Are there any things, do they need to be AERC members? How do you sign up for an event?
So you do not have to be an AERC member to do an event. Normally, there may be some limited entry rides that the ride management may say, I'm only accepting members. But if you aren't a member, you have to pay an extra fee. But if you go to the AERC.org website, you can join from there. And it also has a calendar that has all the competitions for the year. But I'll be real honest, you need to check the calendar often because there is no deadline that you have to have all the rides on the calendar by January 1st. Your ride has to be on the calendar 60 days out is the only rule. And then sometimes, depending on the year and the weather and everything else, we have at the last minute sometimes had location changes, like if you have a trail system get flooded out, then maybe, there's a trail system 2 hours away that is fine. And so a ride will get moved. So the biggest thing is to just constantly, you get on the ride calendar. If you're interested in a ride, you need to reach out to that event manager and ask questions. And if you're an AERC member, there is a mentors list on the website, and you can look up and see if there's anybody that lives close to you. the people on the mentors list are usually long-term proven endurance riders. If there isn't anybody on that list, you can also reach out to the office and ask if they know somebody in your area that they might hook you up with. Some people do get on our Facebook page, but I will just throw this out there. Our membership is around 4,500 people, and there are 30,000 people on our Facebook page. So sometimes when you ask questions on our Facebook page, they may not even be endurance riders answering them. So I'm not saying don't ask questions. I'm just saying that maybe if you're looking for a mentor, just say, I live in such and such area. What is the regional endurance club in that area? And then usually somebody will speak up and they'll give you the Facebook page for that area. And then you can go to that Facebook page and ask for a mentor there. And usually you'll have a ton of people speak up. And then you're going to get someone that's close to you versus somebody that lives 3,000 miles away that do not understand, the type of riding you have available in your area or the weather conditions or whatever.
Okay.
So it's better to try to get a local mentor if possible, because they can tell you about the events in your area too.
Okay. So it sounds like the website or contacting the office is probably the easiest way, or
yeah, or if you can also find on the website, there's a list of regional directors. Those people are, good to contact. Like I'm a regional director for Central Region. If someone contacts me from Louisiana, I'll think of a few people I know in Louisiana and try to hook up with them, or because your directors usually know who would be a good mentor and who wouldn't. Because some people are just better teachers than others.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean people can't ride or don't know what they're doing. They just may not be the best teachers.
So I know you said you're not a gated horse person, but I do have a little question about that. So over the years, I used to travel around and do a lot of promotion events and expos. And I talked to all these people all over the country that really wanted to try endurance. But a lot of gated horse owners seem a little reluctant to go into a sport that maybe is not heavily dominated by gated horses. They're afraid of how people may treat them because they're riding a gated horse. Kind of your perspective, obviously seeing people that do that. I mean, are people pretty open to having gated horses at events?
When before the 2008 recession in 2008, my area had a ton of gated horse people. I'm going to say a third of the entries were gated horse people. A lot of foxtrotters, some walkers, some gated mules. But after the 2008 recession, I mean, a lot of horse groups just didn't get back all the membership they had. And so I don't see as many as I did, but nobody cares. I mean, nobody cares what you're riding. They just want you to have fun, and they just want your horse to enjoy what it's doing. And horses love to do endurance. I mean, I don't know how many people that do like other disciplines, but then they'll get conned into coming out and doing a ride. And they're like, oh my God, my horse just thinks this is the best thing it's ever done. And I was like, well, why wouldn't they? They're getting to cruise down a trail with a group of horses. Yeah. It's like horses love it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I'm trying to think of the right wording. A lot of groups that try to repurpose horses, like off the track thoroughbreds, off the track standard breds, ex-show horses. A lot of these horses show up in endurance because, they can do it and people enjoy it. And so, yeah, there is no shunning of off breeds. Usually probably what's going to happen is by the end of the ride, the people on the trotting horses are looking at how unsore the gaited horse people are and going, yeah, maybe I should get a gaited horse.
Yeah. So do most people do this without a trainer, or are trainers common in the sport of endurance?
They're not real common. I mean, a lot of people may take lessons at home, but they're not endurance lessons. They're just how to be a better rider lessons, or, maybe how to teach my horse to collect better. I mean, really, there's not a lot of trainers involved, but if you want to bring your trainer, that's great. There's just, endurance is, I'd say most of the members are backyard horse people. Some people have two board horses because of where they live, but a lot of people just have their horses at home, and people come in tents and stock trailers, and they come in living quarters trailers and sliding campers. I mean, you get anything and everything, and nobody cares. Whatever, everybody's buddies.
So we're kind of getting to the end of our conversation. So I'll just kind of open it up. You talked a little bit about the mentors. If someone is wanting to try this, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them to go to the AERC website, and there is a ton of information under the education tab. I mean, you could spend days reading everything on there. And, and we do, with your membership, have a monthly magazine that goes out that has great articles that cover lots of different things. Our convention, if you live in Florida, is going to be in Jacksonville the end of February. And the other thing is if you're just not that sure about it, get on the calendar, see if there's a ride close to you, and go volunteer. Because we are a volunteer-driven sport. We do not make money at the sport. There is no prize money in the sport. And so the event managers are just putting the events on out of the goodness of their heart. So anytime they can get a volunteer to come and do something, they are ecstatic about it. And that's a great way to learn. And then find a mentor and ask questions, and that's probably the best advice I can give.
Any final things you want to share with us about endurance riding before we close out tonight?
Oh, I just think if you like to spend time on your horse, it is one of the most fun things you can ever do. I think most of the people that don't stick with it, it's either because they don't have time to ride their horse enough, or they have lost their special horse and are just can't find that next horse. But it's a blast. Most people I know that try it, they just stick with it if they can. Usually if they don't, it's some extenuating circumstances. And it's a very welcoming group. It's an addiction for me. But
so you mentioned you're around Kansas City, and so that's also where I'm at. And I know we have some endurance. I know a lot of people in our little circle here are going to be from around Kansas City because that's where we started. So there's rides here locally, correct?
Yes. So this is kind of unfortunate, but it's also a good thing. The ride that we have every October at Hillsdale Lake, which is south of Olathe, is not going to happen this year.
Oh,
because, well, it's exciting for the AERC National Championship is going to be in Texas.
Wow.
And it's the weekend after the Hillsdale ride. And so most of the ride management of the Hillsdale ride and most of the riders that go to Hillsdale want to go to the national championship. So there's nobody to put the ride on this year.
So it'll come back in 24.
It will. It is. We have a date reserved for the second weekend in October in 2024.
So how do you make the national championships? Does anyone get to go to that?
So the actual national championship you have to qualify for, and it's the 50-mile distance and the 100-mile distance. But they also offer open rides along with those rides. So that way anybody can go and watch. But, if people want to carpool to save gas or whatever, even if your horse may not be qualified, you can go and participate in the open competition.
Well, that's very exciting. So do you plan to go to that then?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be riding or not. I just, I'm not sure what my plans are quite this year with my horses, but I'll be there. Being a Central Region director, I'll be down there to help. And it's exciting. I've been to, we had one in Texas in 2014. I was in Colorado in 2017. I've been in North Carolina at the Biltmore Estate.
Oh.
And I guess that was 18 maybe. Yeah. And then I went to California in 19. And then we didn't have one in 20. And I was injured in 2021. And then this last year, it was in Virginia at the Old Dominion. And I went out there and volunteered. It was in June when it's really hot and humid. I knew that wasn't the right course for my horse. So I went out and volunteered. So I'm trying to think. I know there's supposed to be a ride at Big Hill Lake in April, which that is down towards Parsons, Kansas, if anybody knows where that is. And then I've heard there's supposed to be a ride at Kannapolis Lake, which is out by Salina. I do not know the date on that. They had one at the Fort Leavenworth Hunt Club last year, but they're not doing it this year. I think they're doing it next year. And then in Southwest Missouri, there's a ride every Memorial Day weekend, which is one of my favorite rides. It's so beautiful. It's in the Ozark Mountains. And then there's a lot of rides just in the north part of Oklahoma. And I can't think of what else is on the ride schedule off the top.
So there's quite a few though. So
yeah, I'd say from my house, which I'm a little south of Kansas City, I can usually go to 10 or 12 rides a year within a 5-hour drive.
Okay.
Some sites hold multiple rides a year, so you might be repeating some, but there's still something to go do if you want to.
Okay. Well, I will drop the link to ARC in the comments of this video. So anyone's watching it and they're like, where do I go? I'll put that down in the comments so that it'll help you link to that. Another resource I'll give to all the gaited horse owners on there, there is a really good gaited horse and endurance Facebook group.
Oh, good.
So, if you find that, you might be able to find some mentors that way, or at least answer some questions that might be unique to different breeds. So that's a good resource out there as well. So with that, thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
So the first time I've ever done one of these live things, so I appreciate you being willing to do that with me. I hope someone that's watching this will try endurance this year. Yeah. I was supposed to volunteer last year at the one at Hillsdale, and then I had an unexpected event that kept me from doing that. But that is on my bucket list. So to go out and watch an endurance race and learn a little bit more about it. It's kind of a sport that really intrigues me a little bit, just from being an avid trail rider and watching other people do it. So hopefully someone watching this will give it a try. this year. And I appreciate your time and sharing your expertise tonight.
Yeah, and if anybody's in the Kansas City area that wants, has questions or wants to reach out to me, I am on the mentors list and I'm happy to help. If you want to put my email address in the chat for local people, that would be fine too.
Okay, I will do that. And I'll also share that we have a Foxtrotter club here locally, and we have a meeting coming up. So I'll be sure to share that information for anyone that's interested in that locally as well.
Yeah, because there are quite a few endurance riders around Kansas City. And, winter, it's sometimes hard to hook up with people because of the weather and wet trails and whatever. But, we're always, willing to talk horses.
Yeah, we love that. I will talk horses all day long, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone that joined us tonight. This video will stay up on our Facebook page as we go forward. So hopefully other people will watch it. And I encourage everyone, we're going to do some more of these coming up in the next couple of weeks. So just kind of stay tuned to see the announcements on other ones that we're going to do. So with that,
thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much.